Yes, welcome back to this channel. Ask the Teacher is the program by Teacher Teresa Simon, and we are shooting this from the Waffle Suit off Kanu Street, Nakuru. Like always, we have said that we will answer our questions on this set based on basically some 3 points of view: scriptural truth, acceptable societal norms, and common sense. And we can answer them from either of those angles. And today is another day, and we are happy to have you. Today's question. Yes. This is a question from a parent. Okay. I suspect my son is smoking. I'm not sure what they are smoking, but several times I've been to their room and there is smoke and smell that is not cigarettes. What should I do? Drugs, teenagers, children. This is a parent who apparently has walked several times into the son's room and has found a smell, and the parent knows a bit about drugs, so they are saying, that smell, it's not cigarettes. And so they are wondering what they should do. And there are a few basic things that we need to touch on in matters of teenagers and drugs. And we might not be able to do all that in this one session, but in this one session, let me give a number of pointers. Anytime you suspect that your child is involved in drugs, if there is hard evidence, it is okay to ask. Like if you walk in and he's there and there is smell, it is good to ask, what's that smell? Then they will know, you already know. If there is no hard evidence, it might not be very good to confront. You might get very unexpected results. So what should we do when we think our children are involved in drugs? One of the things that we should do when we think our children are involved in drugs, if we can, as parents, even before we come to thinking that our children are involved in drugs, the issues of drugs, the issues of sexuality, the issues of relationships are issues that parents and children should be talking about. And so, if it has never come up in your conversation with a child, that's a conversation that needs to start. And because they are already having it in school, it becomes easy. There is already an open door. But if now we've gotten to a place you're already suspicious that they are involved, there are two things that are important. Number one is to engage someone else who can be able to relate with the child to figure out if the child is in drugs. That's very important. Because one of the things you need to figure out is, number one, are they doing drugs? Number two, what is the extent of their habit? Because the extent of their habit is what will determine the path of getting out. If they are just starting off, it might not take very long and a lot of resources. But if they are deep in it, it might take very long and a lot of resources. Allow me to say this to parents, that anytime a young man is involved in drugs, if they are sent away from school, there are parents who go back to school, who go to school and tell the principal the child is not smoking, if the principal sends them home, it is because there is something they picked. So even if they are not actively involved, most probably they are keeping company of people who are involved. And then that means not long in the future, they might get involved. So you need to figure out if they really are involved and what the extent is. And one of the easiest way to do that is to engage somebody else. I wish we can engage other people before the children get to that suspicious age, so that these children are already working in a company of people of like values. That is the place of mentorship. So if a child you suspect they are involved, now so please get help. Get somebody to talk to them. An older brother, if there is, an uncle, if there is, a pastor, if there is. And this must be somebody sober, not somebody who will go to put them on the spot. It is somebody who will talk to them. Why? Because if you find a child involved in drugs, drugs is not the problem. Drugs is a symptom. There is an underlying problem. And until the underlying problem is sorted, the drug issue will not be sorted. The next thing I want to say is to the communities, that in every community, there are 3 variables that dictate whether your children are going to be exposed to drugs or not. Availability, accessibility, and affordability. Depending with where you are, and as a parent, as a community, you should know, are drugs available in your community? If they are available, how accessible are they? Who has the drugs? Are children able to access them? If they are available and accessible, or if they are available and not accessible, how affordable are they? What does it take for the children to get involved? Because we've been to places where the drugs are sold for as little as 10 or 20 shillings in this country. So that is affordable for any child. That is only 2 kangumus. For those who don't know what kangumus are, they are some wheat products that come in hard rolls, and they are very nice. Now, so every community needs to figure out, are the drugs available? Are they accessible to the children? Are they affordable? And these are the things we need to deal with. Ensuring that in our communities there are no drugs as much as possible. Unfortunately, some of the drugs we think are not drugs are the drugs that initiate our children to the harder drugs. Cigarettes and alcohol, which some of us have available in our houses. Some of us parents are smoking. Some of us parents are already drinking. We cannot be able to mitigate a drug problem if we are already drug takers. So, accessibility, affordability, availability. Because our research showed that most of the kids do their first puff or their first sip of alcohol at home. So that's something we need to check out. So if you are suspicious that your kid is indulging in drugs, get help. Get somebody to speak to them if you already have not had the conversation. If there is hard evidence, have the conversation. At the communal setting, make sure you mitigate availability of drugs. Even at home, if you're already having kids at home, stop doing your pombe at home. Stop doing your cigarettes at home for the sake of your children, not for your sake. Then the accessibility, because if it is at home, they will easily access it. And finally, the affordability. If the children have money on them, because that is the other thing we have, especially for kids who are going to boarding school. Lots of pocket money, easy accessibility to easy affordability for drugs. And so the kid doesn't just buy drugs because it is available. They buy it because they can afford it. And maybe one last thing. Get to know which company your kids keep. Because if your kid is keeping company of drug addicts, if your kid is keeping company of smokers, if your kid is keeping company of alcoholics, chances are they will get initiated. And the worst part we have seen is where kids don't just get initiated to drugs, they get initiated to becoming people who carry drugs around, peddlers, or they actually become sellers. They either become mules carrying the drugs around, or they become the peddlers themselves. So exposure to drugs, and that's something the community has to mitigate. There are a lot of things we can say about drugs, but let's stop it there for now. If you are suspicious they are into drugs, get help. If you already had a discussion, discuss. If there is hard evidence, ask the questions. If it is just suspicion and no hard evidence, get somebody who can talk to them. But it must be somebody sober. Somebody who will not put them on the spot, but somebody who will try and figure out what is happening. That is where counselors come in, mentors and life coaches. That's what the teacher has to say.